Second City. But before I left, I had written just for fun an episode of Get a Life, which was a Chris Elliott sitcom back in the day. And I didn't know what a spec script was. It wasn't properly formatted. I just wrote it to make my friends laugh and gave it to a couple of them. And then I went to Chicago. I was there for 3 or 4 years. What I didn't realize was that the script was sort of getting out. And a friend of mine who worked at Paramount, who I owe everything to, showed it to the producers of Duckman, which was just starting up, and they loved the script. They flew me out, and I got a job as a TV writer.
It's the Deadline Junkie Screenwriting Podcast with your hosts, Jordan Amiola, Kirsten Porter, and Rand Shami.
Our guest today is Michael Markowitz, writer of Horrible Bosses, Becker, Duckman, and a whole lot more. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. I mean, it's a distinguished company.
Oh,
I'm sure any minute now you're going to wise up and kick me out of here.
Not yet. We'll ask you a few questions first, then maybe.
All right, good. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So what inspired you to become a writer?
It really happened without any participation on my part. It just sort of happened to me. I went to college, Northwestern University, to become an actor. That's what I always wanted to be. I took a brief detour to become a journalist, but I hated it, so I switched to being a theater major. And I auditioned for the improv group there at Northwestern and got in. And it remains to this day that the 9 most talented people I've ever worked with, including Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And it was just an amazing group. And I fell in love with that. And that led me to auditioning for and writing for the big student review on campus. So I suddenly found myself writing. But still, I had no idea that even becoming a comedy writer was even a job. So I came out to Los Angeles to become an actor after graduation and was here knocking around for a few years and then decided to go back to Chicago to study at Second City. But before I left, I had written just for fun an episode of Get a Life, which was a Chris Elliott sitcom back in the day. And I didn't know what a spec script was. It wasn't properly formatted. I just wrote it to make my friends laugh and gave it to a couple of them. And then I went to Chicago. I was there for 3 or 4 years. What I didn't realize was that the script was sort of getting out. And a friend of mine who worked at Paramount, who I owe everything to, showed it to the producers of Duckman, which was just starting up, and they loved the script. They flew me out, and I got a job as a TV writer.
So completely accidentally.
Completely accidentally. And to show how little I knew, I flew out for my interview. They flew me out, and I came out and wore a suit and tie to my interview. Because what did I know?
So no suit and tie.
No suit and tie was ever needed again the rest of my life. And I was really, really lucky because Jeff Reno and Ron Osborne, the creators of Duckman, who were also they were on Moonlighting, they were the showrunners the first year of The West Wing. They were they were just the right mentors for me. They believed in me so much and they gave me so much opportunity, and they didn't believe in writers' rooms. There were only 4 of us writing, and you would write your script. Everyone would give notes to Ron and Jeff, and then they would give you back the best of the notes, and you'd do your rewrite yourself. And you would do this till you had a great script. Then they taught you to direct your own actors, to do your own avid, to do your own mix. So as a result, I was able to go from being a staff writer season 1 to being one of the showrunners seasons 3 and 4. And it was tremendous. It was television school. I was so lucky. Then from there, after Duckman ended, I went to real situation comedy. I went to work on Becker. And that's when I learned that when you're a real sitcom writer, you don't do anything. You just sit in a room all day. There's no avid, there's no mix. There's just, it's just 12 people coming up with ideas.
I know we're bouncing around your career a lot, but Community was a really beloved show. Can you tell us about your experience as a production assistant on Community?
Honest to God, the high of everything I've done, and I've been so fortunate at a young age to do a lot of cool stuff. The highlight of my career was driving onto the Paramount lot the very first time for that first day as a PA on Community. And I'll never hit that level of excitement again, I don't think.
Wow.
Because that was my favorite show when I was living in Georgia. Community, I just couldn't believe how good it was. And so then to be working on it was great. You know, I was taken under the wing by so many writers there. You know, Dino Stamatopoulos, such a dear friend of mine. Chris McKenna and Eric Summers were on that staff, who are now writing Spider-Man: No Way Home. You know, we're in this Marvel world together. So I just got to sit in the room when I wasn't getting lunch, dinner, coffees for 30 people. I got to sit in the room. I got to pitch jokes. I got a couple jokes in the show. I had way more jokes bomb in the room, which was, in hindsight, the most valuable experience of all. To learn that it's okay to have a shitty idea.
How do you get over that?
You just do it. It's like anything else. It's just practice. You know, you pitch an idea and you realize that nobody's judging you, that it's just making something's hard. Writing's hard. You got to have them, you know, there's got to get through the bad ideas to get to the good ones. And so that whole thing was so special. It's, you know, I love that show.
So how did you get your first TV writing job, 90210?
Well, I went to film school and graduated with no connections and a lot of debt and no health insurance. This is pre-Obamacare for those of young listeners who don't know how good they have it. And I worked at a place called the New York Film Academy as sort of a side hustle to make money. And in the meantime, I like really wanted birth control, but I didn't have any health insurance because I was young and slutty in Los Angeles. And I read somewhere that LAUSD, the LA Unified School District, if you substitute taught for 6 months, would give you health insurance. And then I also read that if you taught in like sort of the worst schools, they would give you extra, they'd give you battle pay. Not true, as it turns out. So I got certified to substitute teach, and I thought, oh, okay, like I can substitute teach, and then when I get called for these directing gigs people want to call me for, you know, I don't have to, I'm a sub, so I can just go in and out. And I looked up the 4 most dangerous schools in Los Angeles and marched on over with my resume and said, hi, I'm a teacher. You should hire me. And a school in East LA was like, okay, come out tomorrow. 22-year-old. And I ended up substitute teaching at the school every day for like 6 weeks. And then the principal came to me around Halloween and said, hey, you're really good at this. Do you want to be a real teacher? And I was like, I'm an idiot. I went to film school. And she was like, that's fine. I don't care. It's really, she's like, classroom management's really hard. I can give you a curriculum. And so, this is all a really long way to say that I didn't get into the film industry after going to film school. I taught high school for 2 years. And I was I was in a writer's group all the time on the weekends, like sort of writing short stuff and helping make, it was actually sketch comedy, which is not anything I've ended up doing with my life. But I was like getting my master's in education and I was going to leave LA and like go be a teacher somewhere cool. And I got a call from someone that I'd worked with at the summer camp at the New York Film Academy. And she said, my husband works on 90210 and the showrunner's assistant just quit in tears with no notice. And she is tough and demanding and mercurial and all these things. But what I've noticed working with you in this very stressful summer camp for very, very wealthy children is that you're really good with people who are like that. Like you have a real knack for dealing with difficult people. And if you can deal with her, she's also brilliant and inspiring and creative and an incredible writer. And I think you could really learn from her. And so I went in for this interview on 90210 with Rebecca Rand Kirshner Sinclair, who now goes by Rebecca X, for those of you who are familiar with the Joss Whedon article in which she had a co-starring role. Google it. And we sort of this like I was like, I'm a high school teacher. I don't know what I'm doing. I like didn't even bring my resume. I forgot how to do a job interview. I was wearing clogs because I was a high school teacher. And we just sort of like hit it off. And she was like, okay. And I didn't even love UCLA. love their film program, love how many students go on to win student Oscars and place their short films in competitions. There was no, at the time, it's been a minute, there was no practical knowledge about working in Hollywood. And so I didn't even know, like one of our post pays is like, why are you putting Brad's in all 3 holes in the script? And I was like, because there's 3 holes. And he was like, yeah, we don't do that in Hollywood. And I was like, okay, great. You know, or the phone would ring and I would answer and it'd be like, oh, this is the, you know, swing from set deck. I need Rebecca. And I'd be like, one moment, please. And I have to Google like, what is a swing? What is set deck? Like I didn't know anything. So it's a really big learning curve. And fortunately, the most important thing in that job was to have an ability to work with a highly sensitive, creative, fast-paced woman. And that I could do. But she had to come to me one day because I would like answer the phone. And she was like, I think you're supposed to answer the phone in like a certain way. Cause I'd be like, hello. And I was like, well, what do I say? And she was like, oh, I don't know. I was never an assistant. And so I literally called CBS TV studios and I asked their assistant, like, what do I say when I answer the phone? And she was like, I guess 90210 writer's office. This is Liz. And I was like, okay, great. Thanks. Like I was an idiot. I knew nothing. So the fact that I'm here is really a testament to like dumb luck and people who don't deserve it always getting ahead in life.
Yeah, but you were resourceful. You definitely, I mean, like calling and asking instead of being like, well, I don't know, I'll just wait until somebody tells me not to.
Right.
That says something about you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. And you know, and I think it's once you have your, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. It was a stupid joke. I was saying you could say 90210 hello.
Yeah. Medium joke.
It's the Deadline Junkies podcast with your hosts, Jordan Emiola, Kirsten Porter, and Rand Shami.
Our guest today is Matea Green, known for being a writer on Cobra Kai, being a stand-up comedian, and writing one of the best episodes of Cobra Kai, The Good, the Bad, and the Badass. Welcome, Matea.
Thanks for having me.
So our first question, we were curious how you came up in Cobra Kai, because we know you started as a script coordinator. So what was the journey like becoming a writer on the show?
So I started on season 2 as the showrunner's assistant, which is the best introduction you can have to television. Because I got to sit in on the writer's room. I got to go to set in Atlanta, and I got to hang out in post-production as well. So I was just shadowing the showrunners through all of it. And then for season 3, they promoted me to writer's assistant and script coordinator. And, you know, in that job, if you've ever had that job, it's a tough one, but you do sometimes get a chance to pitch in the room. Sometimes you get thrown, you know, a couple of smaller things to write. And I did, you know, my best with those. And so they ended up assigning me a script for season 3. And so that's the one that you just talked about, The Good, the Bad, and the Badass, just came out on Netflix. And then when we got the season 4 pickup, they bumped me up to staff writer. And they are filming season 4 right now. So that's where we are.
Nice. Did you want to be a writer before that?
Yeah. No, I moved out to LA 6 years ago with the goal of becoming a writer. I started as an assistant for an agent at CIA. I worked for a TV lit agent, which again is a really great experience to see that side of the business. And then after a year and a half or so, I went to work for one of her clients for a couple years, and then wound up on Cobra Kai after that.
Nice.
The other great, okay, here's my other tidbit that I never ever have let go of. I was the writer's assistant after 90210 got canceled. I went over to The Following as the writer's assistant before I was a writer, where the fabulous Kevin Williamson was, you know, the creator and showrunner. And man, if everyone could just spend 2 weeks in a writer's room with Kevin, it's like, I think I've learned everything I could have learned in grad school about writing. He's just, like Jenny, he's like a genius. Like he's just a brilliant mind who like some days I would leave and like cry because I was like, my mind is never going to be that sharp. Like I will never have a brain like that. Like I will never be able to do what he does because like he's so smart. That said, so season 2 of The Following, we had a lot of procedural writers because it sort of feels like a procedural, even though it was actually a serialized drama. And so they're really smart writers and they're really good at what they did, but they had all come up in rooms where you start the story from a place of like, evidence and blood spatter and from plot, right? Like you'd figure out who the killer was, who done it, how do you twist it to hide that, how do you make it feel surprising? And so it began as plot and not story. And Kevin would come into the room because pretty quickly, I think he realized that was an issue with the room. And he would say, episode 4, what's the story? And the writer would be like, well, so Kevin Bacon finds the blood spatter and it leads him to this. And he's like, nope, that's all plot. What is the story of this episode? I will not hear you pitch it unless you can tell me what the story is in 2 sentences or less. And it amazed me how many of even like our co-EPs couldn't do that because the procedural world, and again, really good writers, I'm not knocking any of them because they're all, running big, franchises, and I'm here in Van Nuys in my tiny house. But it was interesting having come up in this sort of soapy world and this drama world. I had approached story very differently. And I remember like the first time I got brave enough to really like ever speak when Kevin was in the room, we were on episode 4 and nobody could say what the story was. And he was like about to leave because he was like, all right, if you don't know what the story is, I'm not going to listen to the pitch. And I said, can I try? And he said, okay. And I said, I believe the story in this episode is that Ryan thinks the best way to keep his loved ones safe is to do everything on his own. But through seeking the bad guy as a lone wolf, he almost loses everything and realizes he's only going to win if he opens up enough to become part of a team. And Kevin goes, that's a story. Ryan's emotional arc is lone wolf to team player. Now you can pitch the plot to me. And I first of all, it was the best moment of my life. But beyond that, I was like, oh, I get it. I get why Kevin's stories are so satisfying because he is you always put story first. And when I write pilots and when I, when I start to flounder in my own writing, I always go back to that 1 or 2 sentence, like, what is the story that I'm trying to tell? Because I'm getting caught up in the plot and I'm getting lost in the details. And this is a story about blank. So that's my best writing advice. By my best, I mean Kevin Williamson's best.
You're also on How I Met Your Mother. Can you talk about the writing room for that? And also, just by chance, did you know Joe Cristaldi? We also have
Cristaldi.
We had him on as a guest. We had him on as a guest a few months ago. He said terrible things about you guys. No,
that sounds like Joe. Well, his whole fucking career is a sham. I don't even know how he got. No, Joe's amazing.
He said the same thing about your career.
Oh yeah, but who are we going to believe? Yeah. Probably him. He's great, and another great example of someone who just like had a real silly, dumb idea with that Twitter account, and just killed it. And it led to amazing things. I'd say to talk about How I Met Your Mother, we were Dan and I never thought that we would be. I don't think we just never talked about being staffed. It was always seemed kind of like impossible, and we were making our own stuff, and we were fortunate enough to sell a couple projects where we were attached to star and produce, and nothing ever got made. And our agent at the time sent a script to How I Met Your Mother. They were looking for writers specifically with helicopters over their head. Jesus Christ. And they were looking for writers with New York dating experience. And Gregor and I were taking out a show with IFC, basically about that.
Called
and we got it.
Banging My Dick Against a Wall was the stage show.
I was going to go ahead and not tell them what the name was, but go ahead. But anyway, we got the job, and it was just amazing. It's where we learned how to write. Honestly, it was just a murder's row of writers from Frasier, from Arrested Development, from just everywhere were there, and the higher up
Living Single and Full House, couple real 90s gems.
You write what you can write on. I mean, but these.
Oh no, that wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I was bragging.
I mean, Living Single is fucking fantastic. And they were just also gracious to us as staff writers, and allowed us to grow. And we got to watch over 100 episodes of television be broken and learn how to do that and churn them out. And so it was
and to this day, some of our closest friends we met there and still talk to all the time. So working in How I Met Your Mother was
from Joshua Tree with two of the other writers.
Yeah, just got back from Joshua Tree
Craig
this
Gerard,
and Matt Zimmerman.
Beautiful birthday party for the boys.
Yeah, and they started the same year we did, but they had been assistants on the show, and so it was working in How I Met Your Mother. You couldn't have asked for a better situation where you could find your voice and help tell stories and see how the sausage is made, how you actually build an episode from the ground up and work it until it becomes a product. And we got to be in the editing room, and we got to be on stage and doing punch up structure. We did everything. And so that really was, that show really made us set us on a course that I'm so grateful for. It was the best and fun and a dream job.
That's awesome. So I guess the story checks out. Joe also said it was a great job.
All right,
Thanks
Joe.
for confirming.
Wow, he finally tells the truth for once.
You can find these podcast episodes in full on my website at www.jordanemiola.com.
Subscribe, rate, and review for more episodes. Thanks for watching the Deadline Junkies Screenwriting Podcast.